The volume. Pick it up? Or...
Yeah, pick it up.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, it's me again. I was listening to Joe and everybody. Your condenser mic is working fine. And, hello? You're looking for Che Guevara?
Oh, just hang on. Let me introduce the show. Maggie, you want to
Is
hit
it
start?
recording? Yeah.
So, welcome to Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. We're streaming from Rabbit Hole Central,
TV.
satellite,
Yeah, right.
I'm here at Harold Channer's at Midtown, and we have Joe Friendly calling in. So, I didn't see the show, but I'm really looking forward to the discussion between Joe and Harold about the show. So, Joe, when was the show played on MNN?
It aired today.
Joe?
Today.
Today.
Yeah.
So first Harold will talk about what inspired him.
Well, it was just a good show, Joe's. I guess that was from the Brecht Forum with Michael Smith, and that.
And Jane Franklin.
And Jane Franklin. It was a good show, you know. It was Brecht Forum, I presume, right?
Right.
Good. It was really good. It was interesting to get some background on a revolutionary like Che Guevara.
Yeah, he came from an enlightened family. It was a nice surprise to hear.
Yeah, and all of that. It was interesting, the things they had to say. That was interesting. I have an interest because I was down in Bolivia. I was in Bolivia in 1967 doing research. So I've got a feeling for that Bolivia context in which all that was taking place. It was interesting to me that Che had thought that the people of Bolivia might rise up as they had in Cuba, and it sounded like as though they, for some reason, had not. He mentioned that some of them didn't even speak Spanish. That would be the Aymara and the Guarani, and some of the people, some of them speak Quechua. But it's kind of interesting why the people did not rise up to support his effort to get the people, fired up as they had in Cuba. Did you note that, and why would that be, I wonder?
Well, I think you're inviting a consideration of the general question of the reality of U.S. imperialism, the colonialism, the domination of other countries, the putting in power puppet governments like we're doing in Iraq now. But in Bolivia, when you were there was basically a puppet government that the U.S. dictated the policies, that the U.S. ambassador probably had a chummy relationship with the president, instructing him, directing him what to do. And as far as accomplishing a rising up of the people against an evil, rotten government, we can see here in the United States how difficult it is to mobilize people to do what's required to actually replace the government. Huh?
Amen to that. Yeah, right.
So apparently the U.S., according to Michael Stephen Smith, was quite deliberately setting up the public with media to turn against Che, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a different context, I guess, in Batista's Cuba than there was in Bolivia. Although Bolivia had made a major revolution, I think it had been overlooked. I wasn't that involved with the politics of Bolivia. I was there for a couple of years living, but I'd been there earlier. But I was doing research on archaeology and whatnot. But there had been a major revolution. There were maybe 4 major revolutions in the Americas that are identified. The Mexican Revolution, the Cuban Revolution, and many people counted the Movimiento Nacional, something, MNN, of Paz Ostensaro. That was 1952. There had been a major uprising, a major revolution made, that's sometimes counted as one of the 3 major progressive revolutions that had taken place in Latin America. So there was a context of involvement on the part of the people in a revolutionary movement under Paz Estensaro earlier. So that would have set the groundwork.
More about that revolution. Can you fill in some of the details?
Well, it was just that Bolivia is a very, very interesting country. It's way up. It's not very hospitable to a lot of people. It's 12,500 feet. It's cold most all the time, and it's the site of an early civilization that was related to Tiwanaku, and you had the Aymara people, the Indian people who had formed the population there. It was probably the hearth of civilization in the Andean area was the Titicaca Basin, and they had a revolution, and they'd been treated harshly for 500 years since Pizarro, as far as the indigenous populations. It's encouraging to me that Evo Morales was able to be elected finally, an Aymara, representing a culture that had even withstood the intrusion of the Inca 100 years or so before the Pizarro came. But Paz Estensaro made a major revolution, and a lot of Fundistas in estates and so forth, many of them had fled the country because he had made a revolution and then began to distribute land and so forth. In 1952 that was made.
In 52 they seized power and redistributed land.
To a considerable degree, yeah. And as always, things get sort of, co-opted and whatnot and everything. But they had made that, and I think it's probably, that's why I was sort of interested. And mind you, I wasn't very interested in all of that stuff. I was there, I guess, the same time, because we went back for a while in '67. But I was doing research on the early prehistory of the Altiplano. I wasn't particularly concerned with the politics and everything, but I know we were out on the Altiplano right next to Lake Titicaca. We were doing the research, and there were all these hacienda houses that had been owned by, European-based landowners, latifundistas, and they had been, most of them had just been abandoned. They had just left the country.
Well, before you go into that one, when I was a ham radio operator, we used to have this way of interacting when somebody was talking and you wanted to interrupt them. It was tricky because you had to switch your transmitting, receiving equipment. You had to turn off the transmitter and turn up the receiver, and then the other guy had to do that. So anyhow, what we would do is we would just holler, break, break, and wait.
Bleak break.
And then the other guy would say, oh, somebody wants to break in.
Break, break.
And they would do it in that formal way. You just holler, break, break, and then you wait, and then the other guy finishes up, and then he lets you talk.
Oh, I see.
I was thinking of hollering, break, break while you're talking there in the ham radio faction. But anyhow.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Personally, I take that to heart, Joe. Thank you for the tip.
But let me just go into the question I had was more about climate. That if you have people who are living in a cold climate, and if they've evolved even for an extended period, I don't know, like hundreds of years apparently in the cold, how cold people are different from the people who hang out where it's warm. Do you have any perspective, any generalizations that come to mind?
Well, I don't know. We have a general thing among, like some people will, if you're progressively or whatever. But in geography, there was a careful avoidance of what was called in those circles geographical determinism. So you want to be careful because the vicissitudes of historical development there are people who tried to tie in all kinds of readings of civilization based on geography or climate or different changes. There's some people who will say historical determinism or financial determinism, like the Chicago guys out of Chicago and the economic, so we try to avoid that, but break, but
Say, Joe, what are you getting at?
Well,
asking that.
I hear from Harold that it was politically incorrect for a period in our American approach to geography, geopolitics, and by the way, racism, that it wasn't, it becomes a climatic kind of assertion like racism that people get resentful of.
Well,
because some of the generalizations are that when you're born where it's warm, you're lazy because you don't have to do much. Whereas the people in the cold
Yeah,
That simple proposition
I see.
is what they were apparently trying to avoid because it doesn't sound right or something.
Yeah, break. Yeah, that is. There are people who tried to argue geographical determinism like that. There were people, I can't even remember their names, but there was a lot of discussion along those lines, and saying the cyclonic movements of the, in Europe created an invigorated population and that. And climatic change over time is an argument and so forth that is given. But as to I do make the point that, and that's what I was involved with, is that the Altiplano is 12,500 feet in elevation. And you have a rather constant temperature condition throughout most of the area between the two tropics because the sun's always high overhead and so forth. But you have a lapse rate of 3.5 degrees per 1,000 feet. So it's colder as you get higher up. And so you had a growing season around Lake Titicaca, 12,500 feet, that maize would not mature, for instance, which was the basis of civilization in Mexico and Mayan and so forth.
And that's what they're genetically engineering now.
Well, perhaps, yeah, there's a lot of genetic engineering going on now in this time. But historically, for whatever it's worth, you've had 4 main food complexes that formed the basis of what we call civilization. You had wheat and barley in the Western civilization.
Break.
Okay, yeah.
No, we want to get more political here.
Oh, okay,
Get
yeah.
into the four
Okay.
groups. But let me get back to revolution. There is an idea.
Yeah.
And you brought in genetic engineering. That's one more thing to revolt against.
Well, maybe there's some progress. Break. There may be some progress that can be made.
Genetic engineering is a unworthy endeavor insofar as it's in the service of commercialism because they are so lacking in morality as to not be a sufficient break if we're talking about the permanent impact on the planet to have commercialism making those decisions rather than something more pure in its analysis of right and wrong. Huh?
So, Joe, can we, because this is farther down the rabbit hole, between you and Harold, since you and Harold are the longest standing public access producers, I think, in the world, can we have a model that goes beyond moralistic shoulds and shouldn'ts? Because I think both of you have at your fingertips something that can be woven into a new reality. To bring in another producer, Alan Steinfeld, who has not been at it as long as you guys have, but you've talked about the Jubilee year.
Okay, here's my answer to your offering there of opportunity. I think I can do that. I would like to declare the basic propositions for a good future. We're talking about the aim is human beings thriving. That means the children having the advantages of good food and all the medical care they need, medical attention.
Sunshine.
And when it comes to their culture, it should be, is that me making the noise? Or you move the mic?
Can you not hear?
Anyhow. Well, there's a little delay, but I can hear it direct over.
Oh, sometimes the delay is when more people log on, because we don't have a
anyhow.
big pipeline here.
Yeah, this is a test run we're on.
So you
Yeah.
can see where I'm going, guys. I wanted just to show off how good I can articulate the future in general enough terms that shall say I'm getting past the shoulds and the coulds, right?
Right, yes, getting past the shoulds and the moralistic judgment and, saying these guys are good and these are bad and you should do this and you should do that.
So, we want in order to have that, we got to deal with the things that are currently acknowledged as a crisis urgency stuff, which is the climate and pollution. And, after the seas are going to hell. But so, there's a need for a different
end.
Right.
Okay, and the aim I'm saying is humans thriving, which is, easy to pull off, to say, but as far as an obligation of the governing institutions, that's what they're supposed to come through with, is humans are supposed to thrive, and right now poverty is definitely not thriving.
I'm afraid it is thriving. It's growing, I think. Poverty is growing.
Well, I meant that poverty
I know what you
itself
mean.
is thriving, but poverty is the opposite of human beings thriving.
And the system in place does not serve the interests of the masses of the population of the world.
I don't even like that word masses, but okay.
Okay.
I've been around, even last weekend I was at a conference of Marxists, the International Socialist Organization, had a predominantly collegiate conference, but there were us old timers there as well, male and female, particularly teachers.
Uh-huh.
And I heard a lot of Marxist rhetoric, and I was impressed that the younger generation is quite well read in their Marxism, and in the Q&As everyone was amazingly articulate. And I was trying to sense out, what is the issues here? Who am I to take an issue with Marx? But let me declare my separation, or my struggle, or what do you call it, my complaints with Marx, and why I'm saying that what I'm offering is different from Marx, but better. And basically, the word masses, I would kind of avoid that rhetoric. But what we're talking about, or my complaint with Marx and all, is that instead of saying workers, Harold, can you think of a better word than the workers?
How about owners or partners?
Like using masses, it sounds a little too much like worker, but how about like people?
Well, okay.
So it's basically the people of the planet are being ruled by a small group, the rich.
Right.
True or false?
Absolutely true, as it always has been.
Okay, so, and it always has been. So, the hope of democracy when they established in the U.S. was to do better than that. Although, frankly, I would concede that the rich were involved in the planning of America, so that, in fact, we're not such a great example for the highest ideals of democracy. But you know what I'm talking about. As a theoretical proposition, government of, for, and by the people, So we're talking about how to achieve that on the planet instead of ruled by the rich, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so one simple way to do it is to pick some number between 1 and 500 for a number of people that we could entrust with the reins of the new government. And this new government would be something like a conversation among this number of people. And they could somehow electronically or television or mail or something, they could periodically ask permission of the governed, that is to say the people of the planet, the people of a region, whatever.
Say, Joe, that is so easy.
Have your support.
Joe, that's very easy to do, because I heard that Walmart now has a computer memory base bigger than the entire internet. They know more than the shopper knows about what the shopper likes to buy. So certainly we can figure out what people want. But the thing is, if people aren't given the right information, they won't know what they want.
All right, so part of the problem to be addressed and the solution to be articulated is the media problem that we want for the healthy thriving of humanity. We want clean information flow. And I would define clean information flow is that all the participants involved have clear consciences, that they're not doing victimization, that they're not playing dumb, that they are operating in this modality. We're going to declare what's in style is people being good.
Well, okay, yeah.
You like such a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? No, you don't like it. Say.
So I'm just trying to
Well,
in words the generalities for a new government. But I'm saying, and lately in my old age, I've come to figure out that the job ahead is to pick some people and get a conversation going among them. What it would be like if, poof, like Washington could vaporize. Oh, it's all gone, nothing left, guys. It's just a memory. Save your postage stamps. That instead of all that, a virtual government, which is just a conversation among people and an appeal, a narrative between that group of people and the public, and having an openness to the public, being able to send forth communication to them electronically, saying, how about this? That we could establish at least a government insofar as people who, as far as we know, as far as what they've said, as far as all the available evidence, these are really good people. Like Howard Zinn is a good person. I have a list on the internet. I've picked about 80, 90. Some of them are dead already. But it's just a sample list. I think if we went to each of those people and we said we'd like you to pick 200 people, and then we saw how they merge, how most of them end up picking about the same people. People who wrote important books. Like on my program, David Corton.
Yeah, David Corton.
The more recent book, The Great Turning.
Yeah.
He is so close to being what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we were to have only 7 instead of 500 people, and they would be our government. A conversation between him and the public, along with a couple other people. Can you imagine that as a peaceful transition to an intelligent social order where reason actually might prevail?
Well, break?
That's what we're talking about.
Break or no? Break?
Break?
Take it.
Oh, well, that's interesting. 200. We said it's always been that you get a group like that. If you do get a group like that, they take over the. I don't know. You got statements that are a little bit hard to understand, like just going to eliminate the historical institutions. We're going to eliminate, and we're going to set up. And the thing is that people will take over like that, and then they become corrupted. And
Hold on, brother.
that's the problem. That's the problem, at least historically. That's the problem. You have one group take over, and then given a little time, they become tyrannical.
Okay, great. That's
in their own
established.
interest, yeah.
Okay, what about that, Joe?
Thank you for mediating.
Love you, Joe. And that thing of you the other day when you were doing a monologue was just
The
classic.
solarized.
That was wonderful. Just wonderful. You're gorgeous. But go ahead. Oh, you was great. Go ahead, though.
So how do we?
We only got a few minutes
How
left.
do we
There's
keep
only a
people
half
from
hour.
getting corrupted by power?
Yeah, power tends to corrupt, Mr. Acton said.
Okay.
Joe.
What I'm talking about to prevent the corruption of power is, number one, what dynamic in this situation that I'm describing would push people in that direction. Right now we have games to play that sort of encourage people doing not nice things. Working for corporations is surrendering to a tragedy happening, and power and control going against you. But if people have the overall sense that it actually paid to be good, that was the going thing, that everyone was doing their best to be honest, helpful, and the Boy Scout oath I was going through lately.
Right.
Scout is trustworthy, helpful, friendly, kind. I didn't like courteous, but what can you do?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't throw in compliant, but.
I never made it to Boy Scout. I was only a Cub Scout.
Somebody was going to revamp the 10 Commandments and to call them the 10 helpful suggestions.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
But in terms of it, proof there goes D.C. I am saying that it's all up for grabs, and while we're at it, since we're talking about a redistribution of wealth from the rich few to the people.
Yeah, I'm not talking that. Break. I'm not.
Society complete with new rules of ownership.
Yeah, well, okay.
Come on, Harold, give up on ownership.
Well, I'm not going to do that because I don't think that rules out a really radical change if you do that. It seems to me.
You might even do
Well, that's another
No,
issue.
but Joe, you got to catch my show with Harold on that. We went really deep down that rabbit hole because you've got labor-based theory of value, and then you've got ownership-based theory of value. And now the problem with labor-based is people will say, "Oh, Harold, you're impractical. You want to take jobs away from people." And then people who say ownership, they'll say, "Oh, Harold, don't you know private property is the problem?" You know, then the Marxist will come in. But I'm talking about something that transcends both of them,
Or
which you
subsumes
hinted
both.
at, which was people-based. In other words, who are we? We need to know ourselves beyond our ability to work or beyond our ability to own, because ownership is a document given by some organization, some government, where there's a consensus on who owns the deeds and who allows who to push off, you know, whoever's, you know, encroaching on it. Okay.
Break. Where Naomi Klein's book is really good, the one that's out, and I like her because she does say we do not want to eliminate the private sector. We're not going to eliminate the private sector as was done in the name of socialism.
Before I give you it, Joe, I just want to say,
I'll take this one, Blake. I didn't know he was going into something good there.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just I really like Naomi's book, and she does not want to eliminate the private sector. And I don't think we should eliminate the private sector.
Okay.
I think what we should do
Break.
is
Now he
set
wants-
up a context where the ownership of technology, increasingly responsible for production, is in the hands of the people as an instrument of capital formation and income distribution, and that the progressives should get out of the swoon of adherence to the labor theory of value. They're being co-opted by that.
Okay, he got it. You got it, Joe. It's yours.
We only got a couple minutes
We've
left.
only got 2 minutes, Joe. So, no, while you take a breath, this is Paula Gloria with Farther Down the Rabbit Hole, and Joe Friendly's going to take us out with his theory, and we're streaming on November 8th from Rabbit Hole Central, and this will be played later on MNN. Okay, Joe, it's yours.
We're talking about creating a new society,
Absolutely.
new reality, new games to play among people that encourage goodness, that encourage people being good to each other.